it's unfortunate that we all seem to have an idea that Roman soldiers didn't eat much meat. They ate a lot of corn, wheat, and so on. But in fact, they had a very mixed diet. And I know this because I excavated a latrine and the sewage pit next to it. So we took a sample of this, and I can tell you exactly what Roman soldiers on the Antonine Wall ate.
That's incredible.
It is. It was not my research. I'm not a botanist, but as far as it comes to the contents that pass through them, they use two types of wheat. So they use emmer and spelt, as we would today in making bread, but we took samples from pots which they cooked in, and that was a different sort of wheat. It's called Durham wheat, and it's the wheat today which is used in making pizzas and pasta. Mm. And they had barley. Barley presumably makes some sort of broth. Unfortunately, it was contaminated with beetles. Exactly. I'm not sure how nice this would have been to eat. There were vegetables like lentils, dill. There was a cabbage found at Vindolanda in the 1930s. Lots of fruit, generally wild fruit like raspberries, strawberries, bilberries, black currants, nuts as well, like hazelnuts. All these grown locally. On top of that, there's material food, which is imported. So we had coriander, opium poppy, which would be used for seasoning like we would today, flavoring bread perhaps, and figs, which would have been imported probably from southern France. And we know we have figs because we've got fig seeds, which had actually passed through Roman soldiers' guts. So quite a wide variety of food. What we didn't find was much in the way of bones, and that was simply because the nature of the soil destroyed bones. But we have from other sites quite a lot of bones surviving, which show that sheep, cattle, and pig, all three animals provided meat for Roman soldiers. What was particularly interesting at Bear's Den is that the survival was so good that it was possible to test the sterols and cholesterol surviving in the sewage, and it came out as relatively close to a modern vegetarian diet. But if you think of a world where we didn't have fridges, you know, and food had to be salted to keep it over the winter, it's not surprising that the diet would be mainly vegetarian. It's just that it was interesting that the balance of the diet was what we were seeing. So we can see this happening at Ambleside, quite a good diet, and this is why many Roman soldiers lived a long time. This fruit, however, had to be acquired. It's interesting, in particular in the Lake District area, a lot of the Roman forts are placed in good farmland. So it might be, this is because most people live there and they perhaps needed protecting from people raiding from the mountains and interior valleys of the Lake District. It might be simply because they were good places to provide food, but a lot came in from outside. We have bread wheat at South Shields, which must have come from outside our area. In the Roman period, we know there was beer. We know from Vindolanda writing tablets that they wanted more beer. We know the quantities of beer that you drank there and so on. But we don't have any evidence for this at many other forts. What we have evidence for are several, it comes from different sizes of the vessels, the wine jars, the amphora, they're called, in which these goods were carried. So big round-bellied amphora will have brought olive oil from southern Spain, And it might have brought the Durham wheat as well, because the DNA of Durham wheat is Spanish. So we had a trade presumably up the west coast and then cross country somehow to Ambleside of olive oil. We can expect that. Now, how did it get there to Ambleside? Well, we do have documents, in particular from Egypt, which record that soldiers went out to collect their own supplies. So it may be that soldiers either collected their supplies from some sort of depot or sales point further south, or the supplies, in many cases, as I say, would have come in by sea. There's still quite a lot of discussion as to whether civilian contractors brought in supplies, bringing them across France up the river system, up the Rhone, and then along the Rhine, for example, and across the North Sea. All of these are a possibility. Wherever possible, of course, they would have used water for transport because it's 20 times cheaper than most land transport. But at the end of the day, you've got to cross the land somewhere to get to Ambleside.